Yeah.
We are live. Hang on, guys. Let's get ready to rumble. All right. Hey, have you ever had that crazy old uncle when he's sitting there at a Christmas party or a family event and he goes, these three guys walk into a bar and everybody knows it's one of the worst jokes you could possibly hear. They're digging for carpet, they're hiding behind the couches. I happen to know the other two guys walking. This is the three podcasters walking into a bar, and we have a special guest today. Let me start out with David Blackman. David Blackman is a Forbes contributing author. He is on the Telegraph. He is all over the world. He is a very tired man since he's all over the planet. How are you, David?
Yeah, that's just a factor of age, too. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. Let's don't waste time on me. We have a special guest here.
Okay, let's go to RT Trevino. He is a big dog over there at Trevino Family Resources and Payco Operating. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and again, I'm definitely not the special guest. Let's keep moving and get to the special guest.
But you're in a special short bus or short class, special class. Let's go to Dr. Stanley Ridgely. He's one of my heroes, and he's got a book out there called Brutal Minds. And I'll tell you what, I think everybody needs to check out the Brutal Minds, the dark world of left-wing brainwashing on our universities. And this is a quote from the three podcasters. It should be mandatory for all young people and parents. David Blackman, Ray Trevino, and me. Welcome. I appreciate you, Dr. Stanley.
Well, thanks a lot, Stu. It's a pleasure to be here with the gang. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So let's get started.
All right. We're sitting here and we normally talk about energy. We normally talk about things that are going on. There's a lot of problems coming around the thing. Give us your assessment of what's going on the universities right now.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a great week as far as I'm concerned. It started out great on Monday with the laptop.
Great week?
Great week in the sense that we just had a wonderful May Day. I don't ordinarily celebrate May Day, that being a prominent communist holiday.
Yeah.
But this May 1st, we saw the clearing of the shanty towns, the hate camps at Columbia, and followed by the clearing of the hate camp at UCLA. We've seen a rollback of this wave of anti-Semitism on our college campuses. It's kind of kind of vomiting up of the noxious ideology that has really swept the campuses, and it really surprised a lot of people on the campuses. And I think that administrators are finally waking up that this is not your everyday group of protesters. These are seasoned veteran protesters that are coming in from outside. They have an agenda. It doesn't really have anything to do with so-called social justice. And I think they have really duped a lot of young people into signing on for this. And it's a real shame that these young people have fallen for it, and they're getting swept up in the wave of arrests and the restoration of what I think is our Enlightenment University, and a recognition that we need to return to the foundation stones of a wonderful college education the way that it has been bequeathed to us, and that we need to steward in good fashion.
Yeah, Stanley, I bet this has been a good week for book sales. Because, I mean, isn't this really and truly what we're seeing on the campuses right now is a little more than an outgrowth of the brainwashing that's been happening, right? This
is the bitter fruits of the brainwash that I've been talking about for quite some time. If you understand, and it's not really difficult to understand if you have access to the right information, that this has been growing on the college campus, and the seeds were planted about 20 years ago with the establishment of these bureaucracies that have been growing on our college campuses nationwide, that have been imbued with a crypto-Maoist, crypto-Marxist ideology called neo-Marxism. It's called critical theory. This is not something that is conjured up, on what they like to say, the far right. This is what they themselves say. And I think that the benefit of Brutal Minds is that I allow these folks to speak for themselves. About 75% of the book is them speaking for themselves, telling what they have planned with their boldly transforming the university or boldly transforming higher education. That's the motto of a significant number of these folks. And I think that once we understand the who is driving this, the folks on the campus that have enabled this type of thing to happen, and begin to remove those people, begin to either retrain them, give them a chance to acknowledge that they have been on the wrong side of history, and that we can choose civilization over barbarism, that we'll see a renaissance in American higher education. I think we're at a strategic inflection point. This is a key week on that, which is why I'm delighted to be here with you guys talking about it.
Well, first of all, again, Dr. Stan, thank you so much for coming on. And, that kind of left me with two questions of what you're saying about what we're seeing on campus right now. But I want to go back to 20 years ago. I am obviously a couple of years younger than Stu and David. And so I started my
Me too.
I started my college career about 20 years ago with my undergrad there in the late 90s, early 2000s. And what was it that you were seeing? Because me being an 18-year-old kid, I didn't see anything other than I know I had to go to college. That was the next step. Who cared about graduating high school? I still had 4 more years. But what was it that you were seeing and that you were seeing then? And then also what led you to write the book from what you were seeing?
Well, 20 years ago, things weren't nearly as bad as they are now. And what we've seen is the education schools that have always been an outlier on the college campus, really not the greatest source of academic wisdom. These guys in the education schools decided they wanted to increase their influence, and they created a series of graduate programs, advanced degrees in student affairs and higher education leadership, et cetera, and began inviting and recruiting people into the campus, training them in this far left ideology of crypto Maoism, Paulo Freire, Franz Fanon, all of the pantheon, the members of the pantheon of the left, training these people in bureaucracy, training them to be bureaucrats, and then sending them back onto the college campuses. Well, this has been going on now for 20 years, and this is what is legitimately new about the situation. So now the bitter fruits are coming. We're seeing the bitter fruits of this effort. It's a brilliant strategy when you think about it. It is really the realization of Herbert Marcuse's long march through the institutions, that they're going to undermine, they being crypto Maoists and crypto Marxists, undermine the institutions of the West by infiltrating them and working from within. They actually advocate this. They actually say this. They call themselves tempered radicals. That's their term. And this means that they are someone, say in a clerk's position, enrollment manager, res life director, that they are going to use their position to undermine and subvert the university in the name of social justice. This is what they say that they're doing. This is not some sort of outsider looking in. No, this is an insider speaking, and I'm allowing them to speak for themselves. This has been going on a long time. And now we see that these bureaucracies have enabled what we see on the college campuses in the name of this social justice, which is really socialism and crypto Maoism. It's a terrible thing.
The other thing, I definitely know that there are professional protesters that are there, but this did start with the students, like at Columbia and things like that. Is that correct? Like that the actual students are the ones that at least started the protesting in the beginning, and then that gave time for everybody else to come in?
Well, certainly, yeah. There's a certain small group of students on virtually every college campus that are idealistic, and they believe they're going to change the world. Yes. This is part of the philosophy of Marx, that they adopt this. The point of philosophy is to change the world, not to describe it, and they're going to change the world. And they stand against the status quo, rarely acknowledging the fact that they simply want to replace the status quo with their own status quo. Yeah. That's the whole point of this thing. So this idea of we're standing against the status quo as if it's a noble endeavor, it's false, it's foolish. And these students, if you nurture them and give them the means by which to protest, you give them leave to leave classes, not attend classes. You give college credit for demonstrations, which I have personally seen professors do. Wow. Giving credit for students to go to a demonstration, holding a class at the demonstration, moving it out of the classroom and over to the demonstration. And I can guarantee you it is never demonstrations for things like, the Second Amendment or anything like that. Mm-hmm. No, these are all protests of a certain persuasion, social justice, which excludes certain values. and embraces other values. These values always seem to be antithetical to the American experience and common sense, and always seems to be undermining the idea of civil discourse, the idea of the university as a repository of logic, reason, scientific method, humane values, that kind of thing. No, it's just an ideology of basically class envy and hate.
Yeah.
It's hate. I mean, I can't imagine anything, gentlemen. I know y'all got a lot to say too, but it's pure hate. It's you can't eradicate one person. I mean, come on, this is back to 1937 for goodness sakes, and it's just pure hate. And I don't even know how many of them. I mean, have y'all seen the videos of how many? I'm just going to be blunt. How many white young men you see on these protests right now for this? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Look at the screen, RT. You bring up some great points. These are some of the student protesters.
Uh,
They're not students.
No,
they're not.
they were arrested at the University of South Florida. This just came out today. 10 people were arrested protesting at the University of South Florida. And this is sort of what we expect when we see this type of thing. We finally identify the people, take their masks off, put them in, give them a mug shot. And we see folks like the guy on the bottom row, second from the right. He really look like an undergraduate. I mean, this guy is old enough to be my dad. And then the guy on the bottom, the left two guys have crazy eyes.
Oh yeah,
I mean, look at these guys.
Without a doubt.
Now, we see more and more of this, and I think we're going to have a denouement kind of revelation as more and more of these people the mugshots of these people are released.
Doctor, I thought you were going to say this looks like me, and I'm like, oh man, that's a much better looking guy than me. You put this out on LinkedIn just a little while ago, Dr. Ridgely, and I thought,
look at that, make sure it's me. Okay. Oh, yes.
I'm hoping that you.
Yeah, that's me. That's for sure. Yeah, I did put that out. I think that it's an example of weak leadership, particularly at UCLA, but also at Columbia, that they could have done with great ease last week, what they did with great difficulty last night, especially at UCLA.
Moving up. They've been dislodged.
Yeah, here's the violence from UCLA that you had talked about last night. And for our podcast listeners, we're showing it on here, and I thought it was pretty funny, Dr. Stanley, or Dr. Ridgely, excuse me, when they were sitting there and they said he just got hit with a pallet, and this guy gets bonked in the back of the head with a pallet. I thought it was pretty wild.
I think it's an important point to point out that that violence went on for 2 hours with zero presence from any law enforcement on campus. No presence whatsoever. It was allowed by the administration at UCLA to continue for 2 hours. And they had actively asked the LAPD to stand down.
Well, I think that this occurred after I think that the UCLA administration declared the encampment to be what they say unlawful. And I have no idea who these people were that came in to conduct a citizen's action to remove the shanties, to remove the hate camp when the authorities refused to do so, refused to enforce the law. And while I don't endorse vigilante activism, I certainly am not shedding any tears over this sort of thing. I think that it's all on the UCLA administration, which let this hate camp thrive and reinforce itself over a long period of time. And the videos are absolutely horrendous, where they are they being the protesters or demonstrators, agitators, are basically denying access of passage to Jewish students. Actually, at one point, drawing a Star of David on the ground and asking all Jewish students to line up there and be identified. Absolutely horrendous. And it harkens back, as Ray said, to the 1930s and that infamous picture from 1938 of the Nazi stormtroopers holding hands, linking arms across the stair steps of the University of Vienna. And blocking Jewish access. It's a repetition of history, and the fact that
really is,
that Columbia and UCLA administrations, were wringing hands over what to do, and what to do was fairly clear. I think Ben Sass at Florida gave us a wonderful example of what you do. You enforce those rules early on. I think
Bill Hartzell at Texas did the same thing.
Indeed.
As an ex-student, I have to say.
It's a perfect example of what's called broken window policing. It used to be done in New York. You police those lower level crimes, and you solve a lot of crime before they actually happen. You prevent a lot of crimes because the people performing the lower level crimes are the same ones who are going to be doing the mischief at the higher level. So if you clear these hate camps when they first spring up by enforcing the university rules, which is what they should have done, you can prevent this type of violent outbreak weeks later.
It's been a real contrast in how the management at each school manages these things, right? And it's really pointed out the big differences in regional cultures between the universities. It's just one point and then a question. At Texas, I have a contact that I won't identify further, but who has inside information about how that all germinated. That was not begun by actual students. That was begun by organizers coming onto the campus and agitating a bunch of students to get involved. And then that all started to spring up. It was not students who started that all. The second thing is, I'm sure, Stanley, you saw that earlier this year, the University of Texas and other state-supported schools in our state shut down DEI, quote, DEI offices. UT got rid of 60 of the cockroaches that have been indoctrinating students at that school. But isn't rooting this out much more complicated than just shutting down an office and getting rid of X number of bad apples? Because the DEI philosophy itself has become so ingrained in the curriculum at these universities and in math classes and physics and English and you name a subject, you've got DEI being indoctrinated through those classes now. How do we go about reversing that?
Well, that's a mouthful right there, and I'll address.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to address.
Your book just shocked me, and I've been thinking about it ever since I read it.
I'm happy to address all of that. The fact of the matter is that these DEI people, they're nice people for the most part, generally speaking. I mean, I've dealt with them. They're nice people. They just believe strongly in what they, their doctrine. They believe strongly in this. And if you challenge their premises, you've got a real problem on your hands in the sense that their premises are what's wrong with the whole idea. And I think that Texas has taken a major step, and that's a great first step in firing all of these DEI folks and sending them on their way. But a lot of them are not being sent on their way, and that is the problem. This bureaucracy I talked about is not going anywhere unless it is recognized for what it is, what it's doing, and that what they're saying and doing is actually on the wrong side of history and is antithetical to what the university stands for. And unless and until that is recognized, then we're going to have this type of problem like a Medusa Hydra. You cut off one head, two heads spring out. Mm-hmm. It's always going to come back to bite us. They're never, right now, all our victories are ephemeral. They're just transient. And we're going to see, because the same people are there. And I guarantee you a lot of those DEI people are hanging around in other positions with different titles, and their convictions have not been challenged and rattled at all. They are still as convicted about their doctrine as they always have been. They have no doubts. They have no doubt that what they're doing is right, and that's the problem. That's why unless we pursue this and make sure that these folks are expunged from the campus, or at the very least, maybe given a chance to say, you know what, I was wrong. And I do believe in the university as an enlightenment, a creation of the Enlightenment, a place where we can come and we can disagree civilly, and all points of view can be assessed and be dismissed from the campus if they are found wanting. That's the part of diversity of thought we never really acknowledge. That whenever your position has been expounded, it's found to be lacking. It's not scientifically based. It's simply alchemy or astrology or pseudoscience. Well, that belief is going to be ushered off the campus. And that's how our society advances. That's how knowledge advances, by finding out, determining what is pseudoscience and what's fake, dismissing it, and then moving forward. So your question, David, was that how can we go about doing this? Well, we have to recognize, as I say in Brutal Minds, that the bureaucracy, and I say this, I'm giving them a tip of the hat, they hide behind the word bureaucracy.
Yeah.
These are not anonymous people. We can
Right.
find out who they are. They're clerks, enrollment managers, they're res life managers, they are academic advisors who are all members, many of them are members of these off-campus groups that are riven with Marxist ideology. Groups like the NACADA, it's called NACADA for academic advisors, ACPA, ACPA for student affairs people, or NASPA, which is also for student affairs people. These campus groups are absolutely horrendous in that they are completely steeped in this radical philosophy, the same philosophy that you see displayed on the streets, the same philosophy that animates these hate camps that we've seen on the campuses. These off-campus groups that I just mentioned are, these are membership organizations for all of these bureaucrats on the campuses where they go to institutes and they learn how to brainwash students coming back onto the campus, how to run a student orientation brainwash, how to run a seminar on racism, teaching about race, which is basically teaching people to hate each other because they're either oppressors or oppressed. All of this has been well discussed, and I think we need to understand who the people are that are enabling this and target them, not just going after the nutty professors that we happen to see on Twitter. They're for the most part basically harmless. They act as fellow travelers. You saw some of them at Columbia going out in their orange vests and linking arms, about 35 of them. We also saw someone at Emory, I think her name was Carolyn Folan, who was thrown to the ground and arrested because she came up behind a policeman who was in the middle of an arrest and tapped him on the head. You don't do that to a policeman who's in a combative situation. No. His gun is right there in his holster. He doesn't know what's going on. And she brought it on herself. And to describe her as being, she was roughed up. No, she got exactly what anyone in that position should receive, including myself. I'm not going up behind an officer of the law, tapping him on the head while he's in the midst of an arrest. That's just stupid, Ms. Professor. And then she had the audacity to say, I'm a professor. So, I can't, I'm going to try that, see where that gets me whenever I deal with the police.
This came out.
I'm going to say that I might get stopped for speeding here in Philadelphia. I'm a professor.
Oh yeah, this came out, and I David Kay, he was on there, and I'm just going to leave this running here. He was saying in his, I'd rather talk over him. I'm just kidding. But it's an interesting, I'll have the link in the show notes, and it's the grants. You just said this, sir, that, they had all the pizzas and they had everything, and they're having the training off site. And I found this morning was just absolutely despicable. Who's paying for it? It's a lot of the Soros Foundation, the NGOs that are out there. And look at this. It's the Palestinian Rights Group. And I'll have this in the show notes as the staff gets this out there.
It's just crazy what we're seeing. And I want to say this, first of all, for all our listeners and viewers out there, if you haven't bought the book, Brutal Minds by Dr. Stanley Ridgely, please pick it up. It is such an eye opener. And Dr. Stan, I like how you mentioned, first of all, that most of these people are very nice, professors or deans, they're all nice people, and which in most cases, everybody's usually a pretty nice person. Yeah. But I feel like being back in academia now, those who do, and those who can't teach. And, there's a funny scene in one of the great movies called McClintock with John Wayne. And in 1963, he sits there and says, if you don't let your sons learn and do everything and be able to do more, there's going to be people in political positions that never have worked a day in their life telling workers how to work. And that's really where we're also at now with our academia, that we have so many academias that have never actually stepped foot out inside the real world, trying to teach students how to be in the real world.
Well, I'll tell you, I would give, a salute to any plumber over 50 sociologists, so someone's actually going to do something, help us make our lives better, improve our lives. The business community, people who are creating wealth, giving us what we want, what we need, what we desire, and doing it at a price that we can afford, which is really what business is really all about, and doing for other people. That's capitalism.
Capital, yeah.
These guys that you're talking about.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Stanley. I saw Dr. Ridgely. Sorry, I keep sitting there looking at these people, and they're sitting there going, "We need pizzas," and the NGOs are buying all these things. They can barely do anything. I've got a 10-second clip here of one of them having some serious problems going to the restroom, and this is absolutely a hoot. So I'm teeing this video up a little bit about a college student and how they should do it. Okay, so let's bring this to the stage. Whoops, let me start the video here. So now I would not want to be a squirrel on a college campus right now. Now, okay, so, this is how people had to use it before, right? So, you sit back and these poor kids don't understand work. They're sitting there they're paid by people. And one of the one video that we were kind of looking at, they were making $8,000 a week for some of the ones that were doing what you had said, which is doing the teaching and all that. That's big money. Good grief.
Can I throw this in there? I don't know what kind of time we have. I'm gonna say something, and I was in Austin yesterday, and I was on my way down, and I was talking to a friend of mine as I'm driving down, and it hit me, guys. We are having the identical crisis that we had 4 years ago.
Yes,
it's
an election year. Yeah.
George Floyd were in May of 2020, and now we're having the same disruption again at this election cycle right now, or in the same time frame, the May of 2024. If people out there can't figure this out, that this is all being man-made, and by only a certain group, they need to pull their heads out of the sand, or they probably are the squirrel in that video.
I think that people are well aware and remember what happened in the summer of 2020. And a lot of administrators who may well be sympathetic to what these folks are saying are beholden to the public at large. And they say, we saw what happened in 2020, and we're not going to have this go on and on, because if we don't nip this in the bud now, and some of them later than others, it's going to continue to metastasize, because the issue is not anti-Israel. The issues, it's a whole knapsack full of issues that a lot of these outside agitators are bringing onto the campus. If you listen to some of them on the microphone, they say this is a revolution. This is in California. They're saying the system is based on violence. We want to bring down the system. We want to disrupt and dismantle the system, which is basically anything that they don't like. We want to, as I said, establish their own status quo to replace the status quo that they don't like. It happens to be a status quo that 80% of the American people are just fine with, and who want these folks to expunge from the campus, and they want people to get the young people there to get the educations that they're paying for.
Just one other point about these NGOs. We describe them a lot as Soros funded, and they are in part funded by George Soros and his front groups, the Open Society and 100 other front groups that he helps fund in this country to dismantle our society. But we also need to recognize that those same groups receive all sorts of money from the federal government in the form of grants. Open Society itself, BLM itself, received a lot of money from the federal government. And these are the exact same NGOs who created Antifa and fund Antifa, funded most of BLM. They're the same ones that funded Occupy Wall Street. They're the same ones that funded all the street protests against the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, which, I make no judgment about that. But this is a cottage industry in this country, and our idiots in our federal government pay a lot of their bills.
Yeah.
So, yes, George Soros is a bad guy, and we need to recognize his role in all this, and his family, and the Rockefeller Foundation, the Tides Foundation, all these billionaire foundations that are also pouring money into the same groups. But the federal government's providing a lot of that money as well. So you folks, all y'all watching out there who actually pay taxes, you're helping to fund all this nonsense too.
Yeah. And that's just such a kick in the face when you say it like that,
I
David.
thought you were about to say it's about a kick in the squirrel, but we'll leave that alone.
But that is such the crude truth.
We just have to do a better job voting, folks.
Yeah, we need to. I was talking to somebody. I was talking to a friend again today, saying I'm going to vote for Donald Trump for the third time. Like, first of all, who would have ever guessed that? But who we kidding, guys? Everybody out there, we are not better off than we were 4 years ago.
No.
We are not building back anything better. Gas prices, I'll tie in energy. Natural gas is ridiculously low. Oil prices are ridiculously high. Gasoline prices are high. Energy bills, David, I mean, we talk about that all the time, are 25% higher than they were 3 years ago. At least. So much.
David and RT, I was sitting here right before you guys got on here visiting with Stanley, and we were kind of laughing. You mentioned this is a great week, sir. You say, hey, we got all these great things going on. But I was sitting here kind of thinking, holy smokes, there was actually a good video when I was prepping for today's show. I would have never guessed both sides were agreeing on this one. There's both sides. You got Antifa, you got the other guys, and they're all doing the FJB, man.
Let's go, Brandon. Yeah.
Golly.
Isn't that fun? Sorry.
No, that's a good video that probably needs to get out a little bit. It shows that there's one thing in common that everybody may have right now. So, I mean, as they always say, you can always find one thing in common with somebody. Or I do like that famous quote by Abraham Lincoln. I don't like that guy very much. I need to go know him better. I love that quote. It's like, you'll find common ground with everyone.
Well,
right now it's Joe Biden.
Yeah, when I was working with Abraham Lincoln, I was there right before he got shot. I'm just grateful that it wasn't me.
I think we need to offer a disclaimer up at this moment that Dr. Ridgely is our guest and does not necessarily endorse all the views being
all the views are
expressed.
impressions. Yes, that is true. He is our guest. This is three podcasters walking to a bar. This is not the Crude Truth or Energy Newsbeat. This is.
I'm still waiting for the first round of drinks right here.
That's right.
I think it's getting to be time.
You guys are all energy guys, and I have to say I'm quite sympathetic to the cause and certainly against this whole notion of the net zero and green agenda. And what I find is that I sometimes come across these discussions, as you might imagine, in my environs. And I refuse to be a part of any conversation about climate change. I would say anthropogenic climate change that does not include the countries China and India and Malaysia and Indonesia. I simply do not want to be a part of that conversation because it's either an existential crisis or it's not. But what I hear is that there are certain countries that should be given a pass because they're developing and they need to catch up. I'm sorry, if we're in an existential crisis, we all need to tighten our belts, don't we? If we're not in an existential crisis, which is what this exemption for India and China and other countries suggests, then okay, well, let's go ahead and drill, baby, drill, because I believe that absent in these discussions is any geopolitical, geostrategic implications of moving to solar panels and wind farms and that are made, that are made in China while they're opening up coal-fired coal plants faster than you can say, Johnny hits the spot. It's amazing that there's this disjuncture between what is actually happening and what people are, lining up to support. And until we can have that conversation, that's a real conversation that includes all these elements, I'm going to be standing tall with you guys on this. Okay?
All right. Well, we'll take it.
I'll take it. And I like that. I'm going to have to use that one against the if we're not adding China and India to the conversation, I don't want to talk about it.
Exactly. I will say to you guys that this one great scene from this week was the scene at UNC Chapel Hill, my alma mater, where these protesters actually took down the American flag and raised this Palestinian flag under the central flagpole. And the police came and took it down, and then the agitators were trying to bring our flag down again. And a bunch of fraternity brothers from Pi Kappa Psi surrounded it and refused to allow the demonstrators to take the flag down. It was a wonderful scene, wonderful photographs, and I think one of those legendary moments of this memorable week. I think, gentlemen,
it's a
we're at a
great video.
inflection point.
There's a great country and western singer, and I just saw his Twitter feed, and he said he wants to go fly out and do a personal concert for them. How cool is that? That we got great leaders, country and western leaders like that. Let me just show this one clip. I'll turn the sound off. But this is China, and China was just put out this week that they produce more pollution than all of the other Western society combined.
Yeah, all of the developed society combined, China creates more pollution. Yes.
Wow. I've been to Beijing. I taught in China for 4 years. I've been to Beijing. I can tell you that they have wonderful skyscrapers in Beijing, but you just can't see them. Yeah. And I'm very serious about this. You can drive down one of the wide avenues and you can only see the buildings that are immediately to your right and left, perhaps a little bit in front of you, because the smog is so dense in the city. That's not an exaggeration. That video that Stu is showing us is pretty accurate. And Chinese have been wearing masks for a lot longer than
we have,
prior to the COVID, because of the pollution. That is just absolutely devastating. Beijing is in a kind of a pocket where that pollution is trapped.
It's in a base, like Los Angeles.
Yes, it can't get up.
And you go to LA today and you can see the whole skyline. It's incredible how much we've done in our country to clean up the air and water. Yet our children in colleges are being indoctrinated to believe that they live in this dangerous environment that makes them sick all the time. They have no clue. I mean, I lived through the 70s, man. We had rivers catching on fire in Pittsburgh, you know. I remember what real pollution is.
Or I remember in the late 80s, it was all about the acid rain up in the Northwest.
Sure.
And I mean, we have done so much here. And of course, I'll give a cheesy shout out to my good friend Keith Stelter. I mean, he's all about the is it carbon or methane that we actually emit 0.004 or something like that. He's always on that. Yeah. It's so small that the methane really, it's just a trace. So I just, it just blows me away. And what an honor to have you on to talk about really what's been going on. And that's what's so cool about Three Podcasters Walk Into a Bar, and really any of our podcasts for that matter. We will talk about the issues that are facing this nation. And in fact, one of these days, I do believe the Biden administration will actually call up Stu and we'll get this whole thing fixed overnight.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was talking to some CIA guys today too, so we'll just leave that alone.
We have 4 more minutes. Okay.
Yeah. And so get your last questions in, and Dr. Stanley, Dr. Ridgely, how do people find you other than on campus? I want to give you a shout out. When we were talking, and we've got my 1910 hat from my granddad, who's a sheriff. I got it in my blood to be ornery. And when you go on campus, could you show us your hat that you were talking to the rabbi? You're standing up for what you believe in.
Oh, it's all well and good to whisper your defense or support for your colleagues and everything. But I talked to the rabbi at our Hillel group here on campus and said, I asked, so would it be appropriate, okay, because I didn't want to do anything that would offend anyone, while I'm on the campus, if I could wear my yarmulke. And so when I'm on campus, I wear my yarmulke, walking to and from class, from my home onto campus, to increase the presence, to increase the Jewish presence, that it's an unafraid kind of presence, and to share that burden of threat. I don't make any big scene about it. I just do it. And I think it's a tangible manifestation of my support for our Jewish students, colleagues, and staff who are facing this kind of threat alone. And it's something that I decided to do, and I will continue to do it. And certainly tell you, my Jewish colleagues do appreciate it. So that's what I do. I
Well, that's wonderful.
I don't look for any kind of recognition for it. No, I really don't, because it's just, I think more of us need to stand up for what is right. I think standing up for civilization versus barbarism. And if we don't stand up, who will? Right.
Exactly.
Stan, that is absolutely the way I believe that we've got to stand up as Christian men, being able to stand up for our neighborhoods. And coming around this corner, if the natural disaster, we had those horrible tornadoes in Sulphur, Oklahoma, you just need to be prepared and be prepared, be a light in your neighborhood, but more importantly, also practice non-hypocrisy. Go figure that one out.
Everybody needs to buy Brutal Minds. You need to read it. It will open
disagree.
your eyes.
Well, what I will say, I think you should give Brutal Minds to your favorite college students, or your favorite parents of college students. You have grandkids in college. It tells you what's going on, and I think most importantly, it tells you what you as a student and what you as a parent can do to armor yourself, to emasculate the brainwashers, to neutralize them, and get that college education that you're paying for.
I'm teaching my grandson to go to a trade school, and everything I can around the land, I'm going to hand him a chainsaw, and, I'm going to teach that guy plumbing. He ain't going to college until it cleans up.
Yeah, but also don't forget, you do got to finish, building that house is probably why you hand him a chainsaw and the plumbing too.
If I can jump in and give a plug here, I will be speaking. You can get your copy of Brutal Minds signed. I'll be speaking at the NRA's National Conference in Dallas, right there in Texas. I'll be speaking on the 17th, 18th, and 19th
Of May.
Of May.
So this month.
Yeah.
Of May, yes.
We need to do a live podcast together. We got to do
that. That's kind of what I was thinking. I know me and Stan have been loosely talking about that,
right.
And so we should do something.
Oh, this is cool.
I'll be talking live, taking whatever questions there are, and giving the latest updates from the college campuses.
Oh, no. We need
Fantastic.
Let's go meet at a bar.
A real bar.
A real bar. Well, thank you, everybody. David, last words.
Well, just thank Dr. Bridgely for joining us. This has been great. I hope we didn't embarrass you too badly. But your book again is one of the best books I've ever read, the most useful, worthwhile books I've ever read, and I can't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you very much.
RT, as always, I love you. Is there anything? What is your last word there, man?
Same thing. I got to mirror David Blackman. Thank you, Dr. Stanley Ridgely. Great to officially meet you today. And again, if anybody hasn't read it, please get out there and buy Brutal Minds. It is a great read and nothing else, just a good one to do.
Stanley, I can't wait to hug you, and a man hug. So, sorry. We got the man hug going on thing there.
We got a bromance going on.
Oh, absolutely. But what is the last thoughts for you? And I know that we can make this country really what it should be when I grew up.
Yeah.
My thoughts on that is that this is really a turning point week. I do believe that in terms of the American public waking up to what's happening on the campuses, that the external influences on the campus are noxious and they're nefarious, and that we ought to be on our guard. But we can take this country back. We can restore American higher education with enlightenment principles of logic, progress, scientific method, and humane values. And I think that everyone pulling together, we can do it.
Thank you so much. And to all of our listeners out there, this will be out on the Energy Question with David Blackman. It'll be out on his Substack. It'll be out on RT's The Crude Truth Substack. It'll be out on my Substack. If you don't see this episode, it's because you're not even alive. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Just ended.